got a situation.
The CME left the sun at the highest speeds I've ever seen. One day we're gonna get hit by beauty, and when we do, it's gonna knock out the entire electrical system. Not just New York, every major city on Earth. It's gonna last for weeks, months, years. No electricity, imagine that?
We've got transformer fires all along the eastern seaboard.
We need to shut down.
Man, if the transformers are damaged, we're gonna be out of power for a lot longer than a few days.
One of the least talked about, but most significant disasters that we could face is a global blackout.
The damaged plane is seconds away from landing here on runway 3.
This massive solar storm will take place someday. We're only hoping that it won't be as bad as it could be.
A lot of people will not survive.
"93 million miles from Earth, the surface of the sun pumps out vast amounts of heat and light into space. Occasionally, huge explosions throw out much more than this. These are solar storms. When these storms hit Earth, they have little effect on living things, but the vast global network that supports our lives can act as a conductor, channeling the destructive energy of the storm and knocking out all electrical power. New York, like the rest of the world, takes technology for granted. Its lifeblood is electricity, and it uses vast amounts of it. 2 or 3 days without it is a nuisance, but months or years is unthinkable.
The loss of power in a massive scale thrusts us back to an era before technology, at a time when we're entirely dependent on it.
The global economy, health systems, communications, and essentials like light and heat would all collapse if, as scientists predict, the Earth is hit by the perfect solar storm.
We just got another 911 about a disturbance in the cemetery. I needed to make a progress report on that. All officers...
It will start with a mysterious object from space, crashing through the atmosphere at 18,000 miles per hour.
Anybody seen that? Did you guys see what I saw? Guys.
Requesting the patrol supervisor and the fire department to respond to an unknown object. Something really weird is going on here.
But this is only a warning of what is to come. Solar storms are nothing new. Several hit Earth every year. Most are completely harmless, bringing us the northern and southern lights. But our increasing reliance on technology makes us more susceptible to the damage the big ones can cause.
In most natural disasters, it's usually the less developed areas that suffer the biggest impacts. There's a big irony with space weather or geomagnetic storms. It's our sophisticated technology systems that has created this big antenna that couples so well to the space environment, and ends up being our undoing.
In 1989, this weakness became painfully evident when the people of Quebec, Canada were hit by a solar storm.
They went from normal operating conditions to complete blackout of 6 million people in about 90 seconds.
The storm only affected the far north. When the power went out, the accidents increased. With no light and no heat and temperatures just above freezing, Quebec was lucky it only lasted 9 hours. If the right conditions were to align, the perfect storm will be 3 times as powerful. For the citizens of New York, unaware of the danger out in space, today is just another day.
Hey, I'm Peter Wright from Brooklyn Power. Here to check on your power outage. You called it in?
Vitaly. Well, the thing was on fire. Almost killed me. But what is it?
I don't know. Looks like a satellite. Any chance you got anything you can throw over it?
You mean for like a dead body?
Well, it goes with the neighborhood. You don't want the media to get a look at this yet either.
Okay, I'll see what I got.
This smoldering wreckage is the result of a chain of events that started during a period of increased activity on the surface of the sun, called the solar maximum.
Looking at the perfect solar storm, we have to start with the right conditions. The sun is a magnetic variable star. It goes through a 22-year magnetic cycle with intense sunspots being strongest every 11 years. During the solar cycle maximum, there's a much larger chance for there being massive solar storms.
The Earth has been under bombardment from the sun for over a week now. The upper atmosphere has become so electrically charged that anything orbiting above it is in danger.
This swelling, this heating of the Earth's atmosphere takes place at all longitudes at the same time as these currents circle the Earth. So satellite orbits, all of them, all satellites that are in low Earth orbit can be impacted by this solar storm.
The atmosphere is now so swollen that it rises into the path of satellites, upsetting their orbit and causing them to rocket back to Earth.
Good morning, New York. It's another sunny day on this November morning.
As the rest of New York wakes up, the significance of these events will be hard for city emergency managers to assess.
So we can confirm that this thing's a satellite, right?
Yes, sir. We've been tracking it for some time here at NORAD.
Yeah, well, can somebody tell me why we're having satellites crashing out of the sky?
Yeah, the sun's building up to something really big, and it's throwing lots of stuff our way. Anything in low Earth orbit is going to be vulnerable right now.
All right. I'm heading to the cemetery now to check it out. Thanks for the info.
Okay.
The people monitoring the sun are from NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. At their Space Environment Center in Colorado, they have been keeping a watch out for unusual space weather since 1965. The moment they spot trouble, they issue warnings to everyone from satellite operators to the military. High on the priority list for space weather warnings are local power stations.
Call on level 1 for station supervisor.
Tara Bradshaw, Systems Control?
Hey, Tara, it's Peter.
Peter, thank God. I just got something from NOAA. There's been a nasty solar storm, and there's more heading in our direction.
Yeah, I've been trying to get through to you for the past half hour. It's probably the reason why the cell phone networks are acting up. Listen, it was a satellite that blew out the power here. Do you have any more information on the storm?
Nothing specific, but reading between the lines, I'd say NOAA's excited about something.
Could you do me a favor and have that data sent to my phone?
Sure.
Could you also send a repair crew out here? And I'll call you back.
You got it, boss.
All right, bye.
Normal solar activity is rarely felt, as the Earth protects us with its own magnetic field, the magnetosphere. But this has a limit.
During one of these strong magnetic storms, that hammer-like blast strips part of the Earth's magnetic field back, compresses it, leaving us very little remaining shield.
The right conditions are coming together for a perfect solar storm. First, the week-long bombardment due to the solar maximum has left our protective shield highly vulnerable. Now, a sunspot bigger than Jupiter erupts on the sun's surface, unleashing a billion-ton electrified gas cloud, a coronal mass ejection, or CME. This is the big one, and it is heading for Earth.
Lewis Parker, this must be serious. Why would a man in your position be visiting a cemetery at this particular time? What's going on, Mr. Parker?
I'm sorry, I'm Peter Wright from Brooklyn Power. Actually, it's just a blown power line. It's just routine stuff. We'll have you power back up soon.
Well, there you have it. But I do thank you folks for stopping by and being interested this morning.
Move along.
And I thank you. I owe you one. Lewis Parker, City Office, Emergency Management.
Well, I thought it was best not to say anything until, well, you guys check it out.
How long before we get power back up in this area?
Well, it won't take long to have the power up and running, but you better come take a look at this.
As the massive CME gas cloud travels through space, it can take anywhere between 12 hours and several days before we feel its impact on Earth. On hand to capture its passing is the SOHO satellite, with a sensitive instrument called a coronagraph on board.
The SOHO satellite has telescopes monitoring the outer atmosphere of the sun. SOHO sees CMEs lifting off from the surface of the sun, headed towards the Earth.
But there's a problem. There is no way of knowing how fast the CME is traveling.
We can't track them between the sun and the Earth. We're only guessing. We're only hoping that it won't be as bad as it could be.
And Roger, sir, can I have your next position after 170?
So what would a power station guy say about today's activities?
It could get a lot worse if the information from NOAA and the satellite sticks.
How much worse?
Well, look, some CMEs usually bounce off the magnetosphere, right? But not all of them do. If they're big enough, they can get through. One day we're going to get hit by beauty, and when we do, it's going to knock out the entire electrical system.
Are you saying all of New York could be blacked out?
Not just New York, every major city on Earth. It's going to last for weeks, months, years. No electricity, imagine that? It'd be like winding the clocks back hundreds of years.
This is my direct line. You get more information, give me a call, will you?
More trouble?
Let's just say we need to stay in contact. Things are definitely far from normal.
Madam Mayor, sorry to wake you. Lewis Parker's here to see you.
I'll be there in a moment.
I'm sorry I tried calling, but I went straight into your voicemail.
What is it, Lewis?
We have a situation. Apparently something fell from the sky, knocked out power in a cemetery in Brooklyn.
You're waking me up because of a power shortage in the cemetery?
I'm afraid it's something worse. We have a plane headed for New York and we've lost contact with it. Now it looks like both events are related and they could get worse. I'm in contact with FAA, DOD. All updates are coming straight to me.
All right. I'm going to get ready. Wait here for me.
This ultimate solar storm won't hit all at once. It will strike in stages. The first part of the storm, the solar flare, is moving way ahead of the CME. It takes just 8 minutes to get here. Commercial airliners are now in extreme danger, as X-rays within the flare can wipe out radio communications on any plane flying in its path. Following quickly afterwards, just 8 minutes behind the solar flare, is stage 2. This is called the radiation storm. This will cause more serious problems.
This is real radiation. These do radiation damage. They stream into the upper atmosphere. Electronics can be fried by these high-energy protons.
Down on the ground, we're shielded from the worst of the radiation storm by the combined forces of the magnetosphere and atmosphere. But anyone caught outside this defensive barrier, like astronauts, has only a few minutes to get to safety, or they will get hit with a high dose of radiation. Traveling at 2,000 miles per second, the final stage of the perfect solar storm is the massive billion-ton electrified gas cloud, the CME.
CMEs blasting out from the sun carry the solar magnetic field with them. They're a supersonic solar hammer streaming through space, which then impacts the outer regions of the Earth's magnetic field.
But the CME's impact is highly unpredictable, and for emergency managers, a deadly variable.
Take a look at this. It's the latest information from satellite.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. The CME left the sun at the highest speeds I've ever seen. And the solar flare that came before that was huge.
Could it affect the grid?
Who knows? Nobody's ever seen anything like this before. You know what? This could be it.
What?
It could be global.
Call on level 1 for station supervisor. Call on level 1.
This is powerful. It's coming at us real fast. My best guess is it's gonna hit us in less than 12 hours.
That's at 7 tonight.
I gotta call Lewis. Do me a favor and get this guy on the phone.
The Earth has now been hit by the first two stages of the storm, and the plane heading to New York is in real jeopardy. The solar flare has knocked out its communications, and the solar radiation has damaged the electronics, causing 2 of the engines to fail. The solar radiation is also now beginning to have an effect down on the ground. Global positioning satellites have revolutionized navigation, but they will become one of the many casualties of the solar storm's overloading electrical circuits and bending signals. If you're in a car and dependent on satellite navigation, this will be inconvenient. But for pilots trying to land a passenger jet in low visibility, the accuracy of this technology is critical. Now only a few minutes away from New York, the plane's navigation system and 2 engines are still not working.
Make sure you make copies of all the stuff on that things.
Data's indicating the storm's moving fast, but we need more than this. I've got a team working on getting us updates ASAP.
Okay, good.
Ah, Mayor. Mr. Parker?
Mr. Cross.
How are you, David?
Well, tell you the truth, I've been better. So, what's the plan here? Do we have a strategy in place or not?
There's a sad truth here, which is that we're never going to be fully prepared for any kind of major catastrophic event. So what we want to do is get to a point where we would be able to protect as many people as possible. But I don't think we want to make anybody feel that the expectation is perfection, because we won't be able to get there.
Okay, everyone. We all know our jobs, but communicating with each other is going to be critical.
It's Peter Wright. Wants to talk to you.
Hello?
Madam Mayor, if the transformers are damaged, we're gonna be out of power for a lot longer than a few days.
It takes months to replace them, even years.
What do you suggest we do about this?
Yeah, there is something we can do, but you're not gonna like it.
City emergency managers are trained for most eventualities, but this one will test them to the limit.
Well, Mr. Wright, I strongly suggest that you get over here so we can discuss this fully in person. Thank you.
One of the most accurate sources of information that will be available to the mayor will come from the ACE satellite. Launched back in 1997 by NASA, ACE, now positioned directly between the Earth and the Sun, is designed to predict just how powerful a solar storm can be.
The ACE satellite monitors the various parameters of the solar wind: magnetic field strength, magnetic orientation. These are essential for predicting the strength of the impact of any solar event on Earth.
However, the satellite was only designed for research and is now reaching the end of its life.
These storms happen all the time during solar maximum. The ACE satellite detects them, and that's what will give us advanced warning.
Advanced warning of what?
Impact.
How advanced?
Anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour.
Oh, no, wait. You're telling me we don't know when these things are going to hit us?
It's complicated. It could change its speed. It could slow down.
Well, that's going to make 8 million New Yorkers feel better.
And not just New Yorkers. The whole planet is desperate to know what only the ACE satellite can tell them. Despite the size of the storm, there is no way of knowing whether it will be damaging until they know its polarity. Just like a magnet, the solar storm has either a north or southward polarity. ACE can tell which way it is oriented. North, and it could bounce harmlessly off the magnetosphere and back out into space. But the other option is what everyone fears.
When you get a storm that has an extremely large southward magnetic field component and it's very fast, you know you're going to have a super big geomagnetic storm.
Until the storm hits ACE, there's just no way of knowing. The main force of the storm, the CME, is still several hours away. But here on Earth, the solar radiation is continuing to wreak havoc.
The damaged plane is seconds away from landing here in runway 3. It's confirmed 2 of the engines damaged by the solar storm have failed. There are unconfirmed reports that it might have affected the braking system. Now we know there are 318 people on this plane. I'm very concerned.
If you're using the most advanced technology, which means electronics, you could have upsets, you could have failures. For example, if an airplane engine shut down or 2 engines shut down, is it probable? Yes, it is.
No. The plane has overshot the runway and has hit the freeway. I'm not sure if it's hit any cars. My God, cars are swerving around it.
With the potential for a catastrophic blackout only hours away, the mayor has to make a tough decision. Does she advise people to leave work or stay put? Millions of dollars of lost business are at stake if she is wrong. And if she is right, she could be saving hundreds of lives.
Hold on. Just give us an overview of the logistics. Okay, go on.
I suggest we start looking at stockpiling gas in case the pumps go down. And putting water supplies in areas around the city. People stuck in elevators and on subways, that's going to be a major issue.
We'll send them in.
Hospitals will be a #1 concern.
I'm sorry it took me so long to get here.
Have a seat.
Thank you. Look, here's what I think. It might be a good idea to consider disconnecting and shutting down from some of the city's electrical stations.
A deliberate blackout.
Exactly. We shut them down before the solar storms do.
Why shut them down?
Well, if they're not on when the storms hit, they can't be damaged.
What about emergency services, hospitals, and traffic?
We've had plenty of space weather in the past, and we haven't shut off the grids. This is crazy.
Well, if this thing hits us, the grid systems are going to take an almighty kick. We could be left without power at all, period.
For how long?
Well, for as long as it takes to build new transformers. We're talking months here, maybe even years.
Shutting down a power station could save the transformers attached to it. Normally, power stations send high-voltage electricity down the line to transformers that convert it into low voltage for consumers. The U.S. has around 2,000 large transformers, and these will be the vulnerable points in the power grid when the solar storm arrives. Around the world, tens of thousands of transformers face the same threat of destructive overload.
In the world right now, we have a manufacturing capability to produce somewhere in the neighborhood of about 70 to 100 of these large transformers per year.
Turning off one power station will not only save a few transformers, but more importantly, after the storm, it could be the only source of power for the entire city.
It's a bit like Russian roulette. Intentionally shutting down the grid would be an unprecedented thing to consider. If I were a system operator for a large grid, that would be a once-in-a-career decision.
A power station takes around an hour to shut down, so any decision will have to be made before the true destructive force of the storm is known.
Look, we've been over and over this. A deliberate blackout is not an option. It's a gamble on a theory.
We don't have to do it now. We have a couple of hours to make a decision.
Look, the mayor has already given you her answer. How much more information do you need?
This is the biggest CME anyone has ever seen. No one knows for sure what's going to happen to us when this hits.
Well, what do we know?
It's going to hit the A satellite in a couple of hours. Look, if this storm is big, it's really going to be hell on earth for a long time, man.
If I was in the captain's chair, having to make that very, very difficult, complex decision, I'd want as much objective information as possible.
I'll walk you outside.
I want to know what are the consequences if I don't do this, and when do I run out of time to make this decision?
If we do a deliberate blackout, what will that do to emergency services? Fire, police, hospitals?
We have backup generators that'll last for about 72 hours.
I'll need to call the governor. We'll also need to look into putting the National Guard on standby. Can you just power down Brooklyn in isolation?
I can coordinate that, yeah.
You go back, Peter, and I'll be in touch.
Sure.
Oh, Peter. If I'm not in touch, well, you seem like a man of initiative. You understand me?
Of course.
Making the call to have a controlled blackout in one area is a gamble. It's never been done before.
The odds are that you would be wrong in taking that action, that the storm would be manageable and didn't require such drastic action. The other side of it is a possibility of long-term devastating impacts.
The many recent disasters around the world have taught authorities one important lesson.
The question of whether we'll get some sort of social chaos will depend on what kind of job the officials are doing in terms of being reassuring, being a presence, saying, yes, we're having a big problem, but we're going to solve this together, is one big factor in this.
It helps if everyone is on the same page.
Where's Cross?
He went out when you did.
Councilman Cross, what is this solar storm we keep hearing about?
Well, there's potentially a very devastating solar storm approaching the Earth, which could knock out the electrical grid on a wide scale. And we'll let you know as soon as we have some more information. Now, you'll have to excuse me. I must get back to my meeting. Thanks.
Look at these power surges.
Hey, Tara, it's me.
Peter, there's surges all over.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you tell people to power down.
You know, you have the opposite effect, and people start calling each other. Do me a favor. Call me as soon as you get more results from ACE.
I gotta call the mayor.
I'm here to reassure you that power crews are hard at work. But this solar storm has affected satellites, and that's why things aren't working the way we're used to. Our emergency teams are ready. Thank you.
The CME storm has hit the ACE satellite, and it's 240 nanoteslas.
Damn.
It's 3 times bigger than anything we've measured before. And the field is southward.
A southward magnetic field, 240 nanotesla, is going to be mind-boggling, leaving us fully exposed to the fury of the sun.
A nanotesla is a measure of electromagnetic power. The biggest solar storm recorded in 1859 is estimated to have been around 200 nanoteslas. The one now moving toward Earth is unprecedented.
All right, let's get to work. Get Peter on the phone, make sure he knows. You three to the second grid.
Okay, let's go.
First grid, go.
Move it.
Check the monitors, make sure everything's okay.
People are really going to be scared. It's going to be beyond what we've seen before. So we can hope that we have prepared properly. Hope we're right.
Tara, pick up. Tara!
Go for Tara.
I can't get through to the mayor. We need to shut down.
Peter, we cannot power down without the mayor's permission. We could be prosecuted.
We have no choice. Just do it. Are you ready?
Shut down in 15 seconds. Take out 2 and 3.
Shutting down.
The controlled blackout has left Brooklyn in darkness, but there are still lights on in the rest of the city. The CME is now only minutes away, and still no one can be sure how big the effect will be.
Authorized a deliberate blackout for the city of New York in Brooklyn to protect a region of the city from a potential destructive power surge.
I am not blacking out the whole of New York because there actually isn't any way of knowing whether this grid system will be affected by it or not.
Meanwhile, elsewhere in New York, people are gathered in the streets to watch what is promised to be the most spectacular light show known as an aurora ever seen.
The aurora is a rare and beautiful sight, usually seen near the poles, but this one reaches right down toward the equator. It will be visible almost everywhere on the dark side of the Earth, but its beauty is a cruel deception. The aurora is formed when billions and billions of highly charged particles smash into the oxygen and nitrogen atoms that make up the atmosphere. As the particles collide, they react and release a burst of light energy. In the upper atmosphere, the aurora appears red and green, closer to Earth, blue and purple. Combined, they create an undulating light show 100 miles high.
We'll be going live to Europe as this spectacular display covers the night side of the Earth. Je suis ici à New York. Nous sommes tous en dehors en regardant devant cet arc-en-ciel. C'est merveilleux et
Beautiful.
Sure is.
What's so funny?
Well, take a good look at it. It's probably the last little bit of electrical light we see for months.
If we think of this as the beginning of something that's a global catastrophic event where we're going to be basically out of electricity for the foreseeable future, then what would have otherwise been a beautiful image of lights in the sky will become a sign of an ominous and dangerous and uncertain threat.
As the energy from the solar storm hits, it creates massive waves through the Earth's magnetic field. These induce powerful currents that pulse through the grid system, burning out the transformers. The biggest solar storm in history now begins the world's biggest and longest blackout. New York has an added problem: the ground on which it stands. Some of the Earth's surface absorbs electrical charge, but New York's geology is resistant to it. So most of the storm's energy remains focused on the grids above, increasing the potential for total destruction.
Can you hear me?
Lost the satellite. Whoa, losing signal.
Global communications are mainly handled by satellites, television, telephones, radio, internet, aircraft, shipping, and defense systems. A worldwide communications breakdown could quickly follow the storm. As the storm disables local networks, like traffic signals, it creates dangerous scenarios on the already packed roads. As power drains from the city, more complex transport systems are thrown into deadly chaos.
There's a question of signaling on trains flipping from a red to a green.
There's no question that a lot of people will not survive the rigors that would accompany a major global blackout. I think there's hope that we'll get through such a thing, but there's also possibility that it won't be very pretty.
Within minutes, the blackout takes hold across New York City, and the rest of the USA is plunged into darkness. Around the world, as electricity stops being generated, the modern world comes to a standstill. In densely populated cities like New York, reaching the top floor of the thousands of high-rise buildings will quickly become a matter of life and death.
Without the elevators to move them up quickly, we're going to have to walk up 20, 30, 40, 50 flights of stairs. The sick, the elderly, living on upper floors, people who need dialysis, how we're going to move them.
Emergency services around the world will be taxed to the breaking point. As days turn into weeks and then months, the disaster will only get worse. The supply of food and water will soon stop, and then the real catastrophe will begin.
The water and sewage treatment plants, as both of them start to fail, will create the possibility of diseases and germs affecting the water supply. So we have a continuing cycle of deterioration here, a spiraling downward of the systems that we're dependent on. And so I think we'll eventually see a population that's getting sick and can't get the care they need and needing to go to the hospital, but the hospitals aren't working properly.
Diseases like typhoid and cholera, hepatitis and dysentery will be quick to return. As transformers across New York finally blow, backup generators for utilities like hospitals now kick in, but only for as long as the fuel lasts, usually calculated as being just 3 days.
Very straightforward reality when hospitals' electrical power systems aren't working. The more fragile the patients, the more likely they will not survive. And I hate to be blunt about it, but that's the reality of it.
In this scenario, more than 200 transformers will have been damaged in the U.S. In all likelihood, it could take 2 years to replace them. New transformers will go to the highest bidders, so it could take up to a decade for the poorest countries to get back on their feet.
This massive solar storm will take place someday. The sun is going to do what the sun's going to do. It's going to depend on how well we as mankind can prepare for this situation.
As the blackout continues, the death toll will rise. The solar storm is over, but the global disaster has only just begun.
These transformers can take a year to build under normal circumstances. There are only 5 factories in the US, and the UK, most of Europe, Japan, Canada, and many other countries are in the same boat that we're in. We won't have power in some parts of the U.S. for months, maybe even more than a year.
Thank you for your time, and thanks to the controlled blackout, we had transformers preserved from damage. We have a lot of work ahead. We are here for you, and we will get through this together. Thank you, everyone.
I need to personally thank you for keeping us on the map.
So sorry. Madam Mayor, we do have business to attend to.
Could this huge event change the face of the world? I think temporarily. Temporarily may mean weeks or months, but eventually one can recover, just like we've recovered from other major events.
We are bringing in thousands of horses and wagons so that people can start moving around again. Thank you. And remember, be a neighbor.
This may not happen in your lifetime, but it's not science fiction. We know that one day in the future, the sun will unleash a terrible storm like this. There is no way we can prevent it. The next cycle of extreme solar activity is predicted to happen in 2011.